So, greetings everybody, and welcome back to what was Diversity in Aquatics and is now J.E.D.I Aquatics. Updated the name, not to be confused with Diversity in Aquatics in the USA, who does incredible work over there as well. But this is down in New Zealand. And today, really grateful to have somebody from the UK here, Ed Accura, who has been doing work in looking around the internet for about the past 5 to 6 years, I think, on increasing awareness in the Black community and other communities on the importance of swimming. So I'm going to quickly turn it over to Ed to give, let him give his background, who he is, and that's a tradition down here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Not only what you do, but kind of who you are, so we know who we're talking to.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Um, it's funny, Kurt, you said for the last 5 years, what I've been doing for the last 5 years, because the reason why I say it's funny, because prior to that, I did nothing. There was zero, and when it comes to aquatics and swimming, there was nothing, zero in my life. Then all of a sudden, it shot from 0 to 100. So I'm Ed Accura. I'm the producer of the Blacks Can Swim film documentaries. Um, they're on Amazon, Vimeo on a global scale. And then basically, it's film documentaries understanding why there's a big disproportionate amount of African, Caribbean nations that do not swim. Um, myself included, I only just recently learned how to swim. I'm also co-founder of the Black Swimming Association, which is the first organization set up to highlight the importance of water safety and drowning prevention in the what you call African, Caribbean, and Asian communities. We have a big issue in the UK, and I know we have a big issue globally. So that's me.
Oh, thank you. And just to kind of build on that, the whole idea of the African, Caribbean, and Asian communities, all of those kind of fuse and mix, especially on the Caribbean side. So me as a Caribbean diaspora have all of that in one. So there's a lot of gray lines in this. And that's important to actually point out from an Aotearoa New Zealand perspective, because the categories tend to be quite solid. And it's important to realize that those categories aren't so solid.
Yeah.
There's a lot of intersection between them.
My wife is from India, originally from India. So therefore my daughter is Asian and African.
Right.
So like you said, it's all mixed up in other countries. What did they say? They say the highest growing, what shall I say, race at the moment is mixed race. And that's the highest growing race, because most people are intermarrying and all the kind of having children, all the kind of thing. So it's getting more and more.
Yep, that's us. So yeah. I watched your podcast, and just to let everybody know, and I'm going to put it up probably on LinkedIn before that, and then as part of this as well. It was your first one, I think.
Yes,
we don't talk about swim, which is true. We don't talk about swim enough. We need to talk about swim more. And pretty much through the entire thing, I was just doing this the entire time, going, yep, And I'm fascinated by the fact that the perspectives being shared in that forum echo so closely to other things that I've seen, not only in different countries, but here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, of the conversation. It's not a strange conversation. Everybody seems to be having this same conversation. I've watched a few things from Diversity in Aquatics in the US. Same conversations. So I wanted to highlight one of those conversations because I don't want to repeat all of that. But the idea of those 5 stakeholders that you were talking about. And I like the fact that you've come to all of this only 5 years ago, because I feel like you're looking with fresh eyes, but you're also looking like you're in the industry. And just to mention too, before we do that, what was it like going to 10 Downing Street?
Oh, it's amazing. It's the only thing I hated about it is that as soon as you walk through the door, they take away your phone. So they take away your phone straight away. So there's no selfies, there's no photographs, there's no that kind of thing. So we managed to get 1 or 2 pictures in there, but obviously that was taken by them. But it's wow, when you walk in there, it's huge. When you look at it from outside, it looks like it's small, narrow. But when you walk in there, it's like, wow, it just goes on forever. But yeah, it was amazing. Yeah, and it was great that the Black Women Association got the opportunity to come there, or what you call it, and talk about um, what we are doing. And it's a special day. It was World Drowning Prevention Day, and so yeah, I think it's it was really good, and I really enjoyed it. It's going to be one of those days that's marked in my brain forever, kind of thing.
I would figure so. Did any of this come up in that meeting? This whole 5 categories of who are the stakeholders?
No. Well, loosely. Obviously, this was before I decided to put together the podcasts. And the reason why this came up is that as in conversation, because I realized that we're all working together, and everyone's working together to change a narrative. We're all working various different sectors and various different people and all that kind of thing. But like in everything in life, it's like you have four or 5 children, and mom's going to work and says, listen, I'm going to work. When I come back, I want to make sure the house is tidy and everything like that. If one person is not put in charge, it will be chaos, because this one will blame this one will blame this. Oh, I thought this was going to do it. So there has to be one person, like the elders or the most responsible, saying, okay, you do that, you do this, I'll do this, and we'll do this together. Some kind of organization, but there has to be a lead. So I said to myself, okay, we've been talking about changing the narrative. We're talking about doing this, but who is, and everybody has their play, and everybody has their story, everybody has, but, so I sat down and I did some research, and I tried to categorize, everybody that's working towards changing this narrative. Then I worked out that, okay, there's 5. Well, I wouldn't say this is not in any particular order, but this is just the 5 that I came up with. The community organizations, like the organizations that we have created, I've created, the Black Women Association, there's many of them out there. Those kind of community organizations that were created based on a need, right? The reason why our organizations exist because there is a need, there's an issue out there, and that's why we've created this organization to try and, like I say, change the narrative, to make a change. So these organizations within the the community, and they have a very, very special place because we are between the community and the sector. We sit between these 2 places. So we work closely with the community, we work closely with the sector. So it's a very, very unique one. That's the first one. The next one is the education institutions, the schools, the colleges. And many countries have swimming on the curriculum, some more than others, some. But I think education system is a very, very, very important one, because this is a system or an institution that almost everyone goes through it. Everyone goes to school, or most people go to school, college, so they have a huge touch points, and like I said, there's a lot of schools out there. They have swimming on the curriculum. How effective it is in various different countries and various different places, is up for debate. But yeah, it's very, very important. So that's one of the stakeholders. Then the governing bodies and the government and the local authorities. I mean, these are the establishments that have the resources, the funding, and everything that goes with it, and they distribute the funds to various different organizations and such, and different. So that's another very, very important one: the governing bodies, and the government and the local authorities and such. And the next one I have there is the press and media. Another very important one, because they also have a very wide reach. And a lot of people listen to the news, a lot of people listen to what the press say, a lot of people listen to the media. So it's very important in the sense that I always say you can't be what you can't see. And I've had a number of conversations with young people, and they will say, "How's young Black Asians?" And they go, "Swimming's not for us." What do you mean swimming's not for us? No, it's a white person's sport. What do you mean it's a white person's sport? How many people do you see Black? I mean, and they'll ask me, they throw it back at me. In the limelight, I don't see my favorite artist, my favorite, what do you call it, actor, my favorite, talking about swimming. And that's what I see. And those are the people those are my role models. And if I don't see my role models talking about swimming or having any engagement with swimming, I don't believe it's for me. And so the press have the ability and have shall I say, the resources to highlight what others are doing in our space, So the press and the media is very, very important. And the last but not the least is us as individuals, us as families, as the mothers, the uncles, the children. We are the ones who's affected most in this. But it seems that we are the ones most disconnected to all of this. And obviously for obvious reasons. So and to put things into context, in England, 95% of Black adults and 93% of Asian adults do not swim. We're not saying they cannot swim because we don't know whether they can or not, but we know that they do not swim. 80% of Black children and 78% of Asian children in England do not swim. So you can see the magnitude of the issue here.
Yep. That is, because I've been thinking a lot about that and that categorization and the kind of things we deal with down here and the kind of things that I've seen in other places. To give you an idea, I found out about the Black Swimming Association through Royal National Lifeboats, RNLI.
Yeah, no.
In a conversation with them, and they were all about it. They're going, yes, we need to reach more people. Yes, we need to do this kind of stuff, which I thought was amazing. And as you go through that list, one of the things that comes into my head very quickly is it's one thing to have one of those entities being the lead and the driver. What happens when the driver doesn't see everyone? And that's one of the things that I think is part of the struggle. There are those with the expertise and knowledge who are, yep, we're all about this. We're going to get this going forward. But they don't see wide enough and far enough. They don't see the entire span of the marginalized, which means that, yes, you have a driver, but the driver is only driving for some.
Don't look up at me for answers because I don't have all the answers. You're totally
right. Interested in what you think of that, though, because in thinking about that model, how does that kind of work its way into it and create the balance within the system?
Yeah, and like I said, and I always say that please, no one should be done for saying this, but I'll say it. The only reason why we exist as a Black Swimming Association and all the organizations that I mentioned, including every community organization out there, is because there's a failure somewhere in the system. And if I can say that 95% of Black adults in England do not swim, then there's a reason why. There's an issue somewhere. So the reason, and I also say the reason why a lot of organizations, a lot of government organizations have, shall I say, I don't want to use the word failed, but basically is a failure to some degree, is because they do not understand the community. The amount of time I've had conversations with various different senior level people in aquatic organizations, and they've said, oh, we struggle with getting through to the community because the Black community is hard to reach. And I'm like, no, we're not hard to reach. You just have to know how to reach us, And we had this conversation the other day whereby the sector sits there and says, this is what we do, we're swimming, come and swim with us. And no, you have to go to the community. You've identified there's an issue within, a certain community. You don't just sit down there and say, okay, come to us, come here, we'll help you solve your issue. You go to the community, understand what the issues are, and take it from there. And that's where research comes into play. And when it comes to research, that's whole another story altogether. The amount of time I've spoken to people and various organizations, and they said, oh yeah, we want to do research within the African, Caribbean, and Asian community to understand why this issue is. So what kind of questions do you think we should ask? We put together this thing, and we're going to send out a survey. And I go, no, straight away, you're doing it wrong. If you just send out a survey, most people are not going to respond anyway. But those that respond, it's just going to be the same answers you get. To not understand the issue, you need to go into the community. Go. It's almost hypothetically saying, pack your bag, go into the community, sit there, sleep in their living room, eat their food, drink their drink, listen to their music, and then when you're having all this conversation, then you will know, you can understand the issue. But you're not going to understand what's going on by just sending out a survey to understand, or take these questions. And so it's going back to, and it's a long-winded way of going back to what you said. You have to understand, otherwise you're just going to be narrow-minded, and you're going to miss out so many others.
I have nothing to add to that. Let's just say they're similar conversations quite often of those kind of things, which, again, pleasure to talk to you. And I'm hoping that not only our conversation, but branching out into other people in different parts of the world, that we are having these similar conversations. I feel like it's a little bit of a movement of people all seeing the same thing at the same time. So appreciate that. Really quick, because I didn't want to make this one too long, and there's a lot that we can get into and different things that we could do at another time, but keeping this a little bit concise, because what you said so far is spot on and amazing. I wanted to get your idea and you are a role model of swimming in what you've done, and challenging yourself to learn to swim and to take all that on and then to evangelize about it afterwards as you go forward, which is awesome. I wanted to get your take on the phrase respect the water. And that's something that we're adopting down here in Tauranga for the summer. Very clearly, it's the RNLI campaign, and we've asked permission and they said yes. And the whole idea is what is the one phrase that we can all get behind, no matter what you do. So I wanted to get your sense of that. Is what does that mean to you?
First of all, a big shout out to Tauranga. Respect the water. Going back to respect the water. So I made a comment in the podcast. I'm such a troublemaker. I just rub people up the wrong way. I made a comment on the first episode of the podcast that you don't necessarily knowing how to swim is important, but it's not the be and the end of all. You don't actually. The most important part of it is water safety, and I find that more important as time goes on. I find that understanding water safety comes up before knowing how to swim. You have to understand the water, because if you don't understand water safety and you don't understand the water, then you can be in trouble. And the reason why I say this is, we've all heard of drownings. I've heard so many people drown who know how to swim. People who actually have, who are competent swimmers, they drown. There was a story 2 years ago about a young gentleman in the UK walking over London Bridge, coming off. He was working in a restaurant. He's a black guy, and he was walking home, and it's probably around about 11 o'clock in the evening. And then he saw a lady jump into the water. Up until now, we don't know whether it was suicide or not. It was a white lady. Not that it makes any difference, but I just wanted to put in context. She was a white lady. And he got onto the phone and he tried to call 999, trying to call the emergency service. Somebody's jumped into the water. What shall I do? Blah blah blah. And he couldn't get through. And they put him through to someone because he couldn't. He basically didn't know who to ask for. So basically, there was a bit of a delay. So he said to his friend, Bernard, hold my phone. Took his coat off. I'm going to go and save this lady. And he jumped into and it was all over the news. He jumped into the water, and long story short, he drowned. He obviously was a competent swimmer, because otherwise, why he wouldn't nobody, for you to jump into that kind of deep water, you have to be confident and competent. But he didn't take into effect the cold water shock and everything else that comes with getting into the water. Mm-hmm. The irony is that the lady who he jumped in to save survived. So when the emergency services came, they managed to get her out, but it was too late for him. So you see, I always say it is about swimming, but no, it's more about water safety. So going back to your original question, respect the water. Boy, yep. You better respect the water, because if you don't respect the water, water ain't going to respect you.
And the more time you spend around the water, the more respect you have for it. So my benchmark story when I'm doing water safety workshops and things like that with community is the time I truly learned to, so you learn to respect the water. And then there's a moment in your life when you are hit with water is bigger than you, water is more powerful than you, we are nothing around the water, is when, there's a whole story behind it, but I was in a 32-foot sailboat in 30-foot waves. And you are suddenly very small. And I was looking up at the sky, then I was looking down at the sea, and then I was looking up at the sky again. I was a skipper. I had 2 passengers on board, so I am responsible for their lives as well. And fortunately, I was able to slowly edge my way out of that situation and get into calmer water. But that's my benchmark. That's my benchmark, that no matter how long you spend on the water and how experienced you are and how good you are, eventually the sea is going to throw something at you to remind you
and to
humble you. Yeah. So the 3 things I always say when I'm doing workshops, 3 things if you remember these 3 things, you will be safer. To always understand the water, so work to understand the water better, respect the water, and your sense of community, that we're not safe alone. And it's the community that protects us around the water.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And those are the 3 things that you're saying over and over again, those are 3 things that actually keep you safe. That's your life jacket. And yes, you should wear a life jacket anyway, but you know what I mean? Thank you for that. And thank you for taking time to talk. Is there anything else you want to say before we take off?
It's conversations. Like I said, when I first created the first film documentary in 2018, a film called Blacks Can't Swim, a lot of people said, you can't be calling it Blacks Can't Swim, because by that time you're adding to the stereotype, you're adding to the myths, you're adding to everything that we are trying to not to do. You can call it something else. And I said, no, I'm calling it Blacks Can't Swim. I'm calling it a spade a spade. There's an issue out there. I was one of the people, like I said, I stayed away from water all my life. And I believe I couldn't swim because of all these stereotypes, these stigmas. Black people have heavy bones. It's not part of for us and all that kind of thing. So it is an issue. And what I'm trying to get to is that we have to continue having these conversations, these difficult, uncomfortable conversations, because the more conversations we have, the more chance we have of addressing the conversation, addressing the issues. So let's keep on the conversation. Let's keep on having the conversation. That's the reason why I started the podcast. Why we don't talk about swim. That's the reason why I made the film documentaries, the Black Can Swim film documentaries. Reason why we co-founded the Black Swimming Association, and the reason why I'm speaking with you today, and everyone else who is listening to this. So let's just keep on having these uncomfortable conversations, and we will change the narrative.
And
together.
I appreciate this conversation, and definitely willing to keep having those conversations, because I think we're similar in that. I think it's the conversations that actually change minds, and we have to have those conversations on all the sides. So my hope is that at some point we can have a conversation where we pull some other people in as well.
Oh, most definitely. I'm looking forward to
share more stuff. And for now, I think I'll end it there and say thank you very much, and wishing you a really good morning.
It's a pleasure,
and
Kurt.
thank you very much.